Hello, everyone. I am back. I am here to film my thoughts and review of Lana Del Rey's ninth studio album, Did You Know That There Is a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard? Apparently there is. We have now found out. It is quite a dark and murky tunnel, though, and this journey that she is taking us on this record definitely explores that. I have not sat down to film a review in quite some time, and I apologize. It's been like 6 months since I last filmed like a traditional album review, and actually uploaded it on this channel. I've been just sort of wanting to take my channel in different directions and just haven't really felt that motivated to do it. But I knew that no one else other than Lana would get me back here to make me want to do a proper album review, track by track breakdown like I used to do. Like any other artist, because she gives us a lot to unpack here, and she really does do what she does best on this record, which is craft amazing, visceral melodies, emotions unbridled. Now, for some of you, this may be a bit of a snooze fest. For fans of her earlier work who want to see her get a little bit more up-tempo again, experiment a little bit more with the alt-rock stuff or the R&B hip-hop side of things, yeah, you're going to get glimpses of that on this record. I do think this record has something for everyone, but it is also continuing the lane that she's been in for the last 5 years or so of predominantly sticking with the piano, some orchestra, and then some guitar coming in to sort of out to Americana kind of eyes some of the music to give it a little bit of a folk sound. There is a real kind of weightiness to the balladry that she has been heavily it's expressed in that heavy sigh at the beginning of the lead single that really expresses just the need to exercise deep emotions. And there's a sleepiness to it that can be, it can put off some people. But I would argue that this album feels the most refined and the most exploratory sonically. It feels the most lofty conceptually compared to her two recent records, Blue Banisters and Chemtrails, the former of which, I've got to be honest with you, I am not a really big fan of. It sort of stands as my least favorite Lana Del Rey record. There's just not a lot on that record or even Blue Banisters that I feel like coming back to today compared to her earlier work. I remember it was right around after 2017 when Lana released Lust for Life that she talked about another record that she wanted to work on. And she mentioned that the sound she was going for was something along the lines of the ballad on that record, Change, which is very stripped back at the piano and raw. And one could argue that she's been in that lane now for quite some time, 4 albums later. Maybe it's time to change things up. But there are some interesting interspersed experimental hip-hop, R&B influenced elements. And there's something that I feel ties this album together in the story arc of it. This feels deeply, deeply personal, rather than just a collection of songs that she wrote in the time period that she decided this album was going to be created within. She decided to really go in with this album with a clear vision as to a story she wanted, as to a journey of trauma and abuse, of trauma and darkness that she wanted to explore. And I believe that the track list kind of does explore it through that, almost like going through a dark tunnel and then coming out to the light at the end, as she goes back through her own past and her own familial history and the relationships that she has with her family. There's a lot of heavy subject matter here. There is, talk of sexual assault. There is talk of suicide. Heavy topics that I don't want to dwell too long on because I want this video to be monetized. I hate to admit, but we can't brush them under the rug. Some of this lyrically, I didn't even pick up on because of the hurried way that she sort of breathily expresses some of her darkest lyrics on this record, that if you're not reading the lyrics alongside, you may miss. And as I am a big person of melody always comes first to me. Lyrics also always hold such power in Lana's music. And one could argue that the lyrics are the real building blocks. One could argue that the lyrics are the true essence of her soul and music. But I think that she has a real ear for melody, and that can't be understated here. But the lyrics are definitely not only poignantly heart-wrenching in places where they need to be, or extremely revelatory about her own personal suffering and grief or struggles. but also humorous where they need to be in a way that feels very apt for Lana's sardonic attitude. And sort of witty subversion of the stereotype femme fatale. My favorite line, of course, being, if you want a basic bitch, go to the Beverly Center and find one. I'm not like those other girls. And I want that lyric, stitched into like a pillow on my couch. Like it needs to be in my house somewhere. Like it's one of those live, laugh, love quotes for me. It's just that's so perfect. And it's so emblematic of Lana's unseriousness on this record, even though she is so serious. She's really not holding back. She gives 0 Fs in the way she's writing about romance. It's become somewhat part and parcel for her, but I appreciate that as she grows with her songwriting, she just becomes more comfortable sort of treating the listener as if we're in her own head. She's not making presumptions about things that, we don't know about. She's just going there without worrying about, whether we are fully tuned into the story or not. And it's symbolically important, even if we can't fully understand the anecdotal references that she's pointing to. The specificity of her lyrics is really important here, is what I'm trying to get at. On the album cover, we have somewhat a callback to Joni Mitchell's Blue with the sort of blue sepia tint, the blue tinted, head tilted, sort of wistful look in the camera. She's in sort of her nightgown, and it definitely gives Playboy Mansion vibes, but it also gives, it's sultry, but melancholic, and it's the perfect blend of both that I think represents this album wonderfully. I will say it's not her strongest album cover. I definitely feel like she has more striking photographic elements to some of her other covers. But I also think that it's emblematic of this album not necessarily wanting that. This album is all about the music, not so much the visuals that are attached to it. As a matter of fact, she hasn't really given us pretty much any music videos thus far for any of the songs, which is sort of unusual for her at this stage. So, this is really kind of just her purely being about the music. We open the album with sort of a gospel choir singer. She's keeping time and conducting. It's got a really compelling atmosphere to it to get your ear tuned in. I think it was a very clever and interesting way to begin the song. The song, The Grants, which is a reference to, obviously, Elizabeth Woolridge Grant is the full legal name of Lana Del Rey. So she is referencing her family. We have in the song a almost church hymn-like refrain that interpolates this idea of taking the memories of you and me with me into the next life. She sings and references that a pastor told her once, when you leave, meaning when you die, when you depart, all you take is your memory. And so I'm going to take mine of you with me. And then she references John Denver's Rocky Mountain High to sort of symbolize a sort of stairway to heaven, kind of Led Zeppelin kind of illusion. Do you think about heaven? Do you think about me? So many mountains too high to climb, so many rivers so long, but I'm doing the hard stuff. I'm doing my time. I'm doing it for us, for our family line. So understanding your family trauma and lineage, understanding the cycle of life and death and celebrating it, taking the good and leaving the bad. This is like a baptismal song for the soul. It opens up the record in a very lofty and spiritual way. And it's something that I think really immediately got my attention, not just in the fact that I think it has one of the best sing-along melodies. It just makes me want to sing with them, like the choral harmonizations she has with the choir. I just feel like I'm at church, in the pews. Like I'm there with her and her family, like in what might be a funeral setting, and espousing this sort of lofty aspiration of where I want my spirit to travel, to the place of my ancestors, in the spirit of my ancestors. It's just so stirring. It's so stirring emotionally, and a beautiful way to open up the record. Into the title track, which I have already reviewed on this channel in December when it was the first song that she released for it. It's a grandiose, somewhat honeymoon-esque, sleepy ballad. The orchestra is kind of just this nice sort of crepuscular, moody atmosphere. The tunnel of Ocean Boulevard, the tunnel under Ocean Boulevard, I do believe truly is a metaphor for sort of finding a place that you have to travel through that's dark, that's kind of claustrophobic, that one must travel through to heal and come out the other side. And being underneath Ocean Boulevard doesn't necessarily have to mean specifically a road called Ocean Boulevard. It means symbolically a place that is a lot more, sunny, populated, sociable, a place that one would normally sort of waltz through life on and never see what's underneath. I think of it as like a million tourists walk Ocean Boulevard. They have no idea that beneath this very atmosphere of this boardwalk, as I'm imagining it, there's this tunnel, and it has these beautiful mosaics of tile. So it's beautiful, but it's mysterious. It's undiscovered. Few go and venture. And this album is the symbol of that. I think through this album, she is entering that tunnel, and she is coming out the other side lighter because of it. And of course, there's this theme of letting the light in that comes in on a lot of tracks. So talk about that. Track number 3, Sweet. I think Sweet is one of the most classically gorgeous melodies Lana crafts on this record. It has a very strong 1950s sound. It almost gives me Sound of Music vibes. Like it's almost Broadway. It's almost musical theater. It's also one of the most LA songs on the record. She mentions climbing up Griffith, which I believe Griffith is a mountain. I know the Griffith Observatory is a famous place in LA that a lot of concerts are held at. And then she mentions the Beverly Center, which again is where you go for basic bitches. And then she talks about her home on Genesee. So all of these places I'm not familiar with, but I looked them up. They're all LA places. And if I'm not there, come to my house. But if not, I'm in the sweet North Country. And she sings, almost, like I said, Sound of Music-esque about these, woods and valleys, the sweet North Country, in bare feet. And it's wistfully, kind of hopefully romantic, which is a bit of a stark contrast from where the album begins to, go from after this track. This song is very hopeful about love, and wistfully romantic in a way that Lana has been in the past with her songs. And then when we get into track 4, we immediately start going into heavy dark territory. Track number 4, which was the second single to be released, and it is the longest song on this record, is called A&W. I always thought when the initial track list came out that it was just AW, and I actually thought AW stood for aw, like the expression. And then when I listened to the song, I thought, oh, it obviously stands for American Whore. But I thought, why is there an and symbol in there? What does American and whore mean? And this goes to show how uncultured I am in certain aspects of Americana. I swear I live in Pennsylvania. Like, I should know this. But in some ways I was born yesterday. I completely, the reference to A&W root beer completely went over my head. I had no idea that she was also playing reference on a sort of beverage, commercial beverage that's sort of associated with blue-collar workers. And it fits in her sort of soda trilogy. If you think back on like Diet Mountain Dew and then her song Cola, she's sort of paying tribute to that. So, again, it's really about the American whore, initials. But that was just an interesting other clever allusion in there that completely went over my head until I saw people talking about it. But goodness gracious, A&W, melodically, is a very interesting song. It's split into 2. And there's 2 songs that you would never think kind of would work well together. But boy, does Lana and her producers, I have to give it to Jack Antonoff. I know Jack Antonoff is, overused by a lot of the pop girlies. I'm getting really sick of his sound. Talked about that a lot already. But he does a good job with this noir trip hop sort of stuff that needs to be upbeat, that needs to be kind of propulsive when it needs to be. I haven't done a cartwheel since I was 9. I haven't seen my mother in a long, long time. I mean, look at me. Look at the length of my hair and my face and the shape of my body. Do you really think I give a damn what I do after years of just hearing them talking? I say I live in Rosemead. Really, I'm at the Ramada. It doesn't really matter, doesn't really matter. I mean, I'm assuming Rosemead is a town, perhaps somewhere that's got lofty connotations, where, a Stepford wife may want to live. But a Ramada is just a hotel, a Ramada Inn. It's sort of this facade of being a little bit more prim and proper than she really is. But it also doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, wherever she is an American whore. At least that's how she will be labeled by society. Call him up, come into my bedroom, ended up, we F on the hotel floor. It's not about having someone to love me anymore. This is the experience of being an American whore. So it's heartbreaking to understand the sort of downtrodden attitude that Lana adopts on this track. I mean, she is so openly and honestly admitting that she does not feel she deserves any sympathy for perhaps being abused by men because of the way that society has sort of made her feel in terms of how she looks, or in terms of the fact that, because she's, experimenting and sleeping with guys, she is automatically, she is to blame if something were to go wrong. And she references this in a very heavy way in verse 3. If I told you that I was raped, do you really think that anybody would think I didn't ask for it? I won't testify. I already effed up my story. I mean, this is brutal, and Lana is so directly talking about herself and what I assume is, how she feels. And I think so many women can relate to. I saw one reviewer point out something that I wouldn't have not caught at all. I haven't done a cartwheel since I was 9 isn't just about loss of innocence, but it's also about the fact that when you grow as a woman, you may not want to expose yourself in certain ways past a certain age by doing something that flips you upside down. Because the boys may say something, draws attention to yourself. It goes with the whole, way a woman looks is often used to typecast or stereotype them into what people think they deserve when it comes to love and sex. It's a horrible sort of misogynistic ideology that she's openly admitting to feeling entrapped within in this song. So when we switch into the second half, Jimmy, Jimmy, Cocoa Puff, Jimmy, Jimmy, ride. Jimmy, get me high. Love me if you love or not, you can be my light. Your mom called, I told her, you're effing up big time. She says this in a very sort of nursery rhyme, kind of playful way. And it's very catchy. And I'll be honest, at the beginning, I just did not understand it at all. But apparently, Jimmy is a name that she's used as sort of a male stand-in back on Ultraviolence. She references a Jimmy. And so obviously it's not a literal Jimmy. It's a stand-in for men, a John Smith, so to speak. And it's her sort of taking the negative energy and flipping this on its head and saying, well, if I'm going to be a whore, then I'm going to be a whore. I'm going to go to the club. I'm going to have fun. And this is something that Lana has often flirted with, subverting and playing around playfully with expectations around sex and femininity. So it's a heartbreaking song, but it's also a bop, and only Lana can make such an uncomfortable juxtaposition work. It's super dark and seedy and grimy and off-putting. but it's also one that you can't help but want to dance to and let loose to. Like it brings out, the stripper. You want to break out the stripper moves. So, hey, own that. Just own your sexuality, right? Flip it in their face. So we come to the most controversial track on the record. We have the Judah Smith interlude, which I see a lot of people saying is a skip, and I will be inclined to agree here. Judah Smith is a preacher from the Hillsong Church, and it's one of those mega churches that, makes way too much money that we should be really taxing, And then if you look into their finances, it's always kind of shady. So, unsurprisingly, there are, if you look at his past, this guy, he's a younger guy. If you look at, his views, there have been traditional ultra Christian viewpoints, Orthodox Christian viewpoints espoused, particularly homophobic ones. And so a lot of Lana Del Rey fans are sort of puzzled as to why he gets, this 3-minute, unbridled space at the podium, where he talks about, where he pontificates about the difference between love and lust. Boy, it's not like any sermon I've ever heard at my church, that's for sure. Speaking so openly about desire and, what God wants from you. He quotes scripture, but then he also kind of just extemporaneously goes off on his little tangents. And then he also, waxes poetic. It's a very unhinged, in my opinion, rant or sort of profession of, inner turmoil that this guy is dealing with. But I think that the most important aspect of it is boiled down in the last kind of few lines here. If you're going to take anything away from this sort of mumbo jumbo, is that I used to think my preaching was mostly about you. And you're not going to like this, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I've discovered my preaching is mostly about me. And I've seen it framed as sort of Lana really letting that be the end to signify that it's emblematic of where Lana's headspace is on this record. She is fully accepting that her story that is her story. Like she's no longer sugarcoating or scapegoating it. This is unapologetically going to be a personal record that is about her, and if you can relate to it, that's great. If you can't, you can't. And I think owning up to that, is a very great way to sort of beat the sort of egotistical, narcissistic sort of way that some songwriters and preachers and writers in general can feel about their own work. They get a little high on their own supply. And Lana does laugh in the background. This was clearly recorded like on her phone, during the sermon, with her sisters or something. They were sitting in the church or whatever. And at points she's laughing, and you can't really tell if she's laughing at the jokes the sermon guy is making or if she's laughing at him. It's left up to the interpreter. I think that it's a bit of both. I definitely think that the fact that she placed this song right after A&W is, is somewhat of a statement. Talking about God judging, you based on your lusts and your earthly desires. Her, coming out with this and the moody sort of instrumental is cautionary. It's dark, even though what he's talking about is uplifting, or it's supposed to be uplifting. She's not treating it that way. She's sonically treating it as sort of murky. And I appreciate that. But I gotta be honest with you. Is this song staying on my phone and staying on the playlists? No. If I have to remove a song from this record, it's this one. There's already another much stronger, well-warranted interlude coming up, only 2 songs later, which is kind of strange. The album isn't really balanced in terms of where the interludes are placed. I do find that a little strange, a little side-eye. But here we are, and yeah, Judah Smith, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I bet he's much more reformed now. Lana would certainly not be featuring someone who openly today was probably spouting such bigoted nonsense. I don't know directly how much spiritualism plays, like Christianity plays into Lana Del Rey's music or life, there's definitely spirituality there, but she doesn't strike me as someone who's that, you know, outwardly religious. So it's interesting that she is including this, and I know that a lot of people are side eyeing it. But you know, art is kind of meant to be confrontational, and it is meant to sort of be provocative. And I think that it does its purpose in the tapestry of the record of sort of making you think about life, making you think about desire and passion, and it has a place in it. It's just understandable if you want to skip. Very understandable. So we move on to the two Jean Baptiste tracks. Oh, this pianist. My mom is a real fan of Jean Baptiste. And actually, I just rewatched the 2020 Pixar film Soul. This was the second time I'd seen it, and I fell in love with it even more upon the second viewing. But it partly is due to Jean Baptiste's piano. So dulcet. So melancholic and beautiful and stirring. And his piano on this is like the best piano I've heard in a long time on a ballad. It's rippling, it's cascading, it's encompassing and deeply pained. It's so pained. There's this beautiful sort of major to what I believe is minor transition that is the choral kind of focus of the melody. You've been acting pretty restless, dancing like the young and restless, and I'm obsessed with it. Candy necklaces. And the response with the piano and the melody is just chef's kiss. I absolutely am floored by. And I completely, you know, officially on the first listen, the verse two just kind of went over my head at the first listen, and going back and looking at the lyrics, it's just so heavy. Sitting on the sofa, feeling super suicidal. Hate to say the word, but baby, hand on the Bible, I do. Feel like it's you, the one who's bringing me down. Thought you were cool, and we were kicking it like Tribe Called Quest. You the best, but baby, you've been bringing me down. I can see it now. I think Candy Necklace refers to, you know, jewelry being kind of substituting a candy necklace, you know, high-end jewelry versus a candy necklace. A candy necklace is something you probably make in elementary school. It's very innocent. It's very childlike. It's something you can eat and enjoy. But it is probably not going to last very long, you know. And one could think of it as cheap. And then, you know, like a jewel necklace is something that has a lot of value, and it's meant to be preserved, and it's meant to signify, you know, a commitment, like maybe it's a Valentine's Day gift, you know, it's something very special. And so the idea of a candy necklace and sort of her kind of continually pontificating upon it and how she's obsessed with it is sort of perhaps her calling all his gifts to her candy necklaces. Maybe he showers her in gifts, but he treats her like shit. You know, and so she was a bit blinded by the material at the beginning, and she's finally starting to kind of wake up and see that his candy necklaces, you know, they don't have any actual heart or meaning to them, not like the ones we made in grade school. That's my, you know, interpretation of it. It's reflecting back on a relationship that should not have gone on as long as it did, but understanding why it was that it took so long for this person to run away, to say no. So then we have the Jean Baptiste interlude. He showcases his deft, you know, key work. There's not much more I can say. It has a live recording feel, so it sort of sounds acoustically like it was recorded in, you know, some sort of space, like maybe a church or a concert hall. Well, not a concert hall, but like somewhere, you know, acoustically not the best, but that kind of gives it a live feel. We move into Kintsugi. One of the longer tracks on this record. This is a heavy one. This is the one where she is basically directly singing about recent events where supposedly she has lost several elderly relatives, one being her grandmother, another being her great uncle. And she's recalling, being at the funerals, though she could only go to one of them. Chucky was there for 3 out of 3. I was there for the third because I couldn't be there for the one who was closest to me. I can't say I run when things get hard. It's just that I don't trust myself with my heart. But I've had to let it break a little more because they say that's what it's for. That's how the light shines in, she repeats on the chorus. The idea of kintsugi is a Japanese philosophy that if you break a piece of pottery, for example, you fill in the cracks with gold, silver, or platinum. And the idea is that instead of trying to disguise the repair, to show that there never was a crack to begin with, it emphasizes that there was a crack, but it has now been filled with gold or something beautiful and luminous, something that catches your eye and reminds you that you healed. You don't forget. And she also alludes to that's how the light gets in. The cracks are where the light gets in. That's a familiar motivational phrase. In many ways, this album is her, exploration of that philosophy, exposing the cracks and showing the way she's going through and healing them by writing songs, exploring these dark moments. As someone who has recently lost a beloved one, my grandmother, she passed away 2 months ago. It hits especially hard. I actually believe my grandmother was 92 when she passed in December, and Lana mentions that her grandmother was 92. Not in the song specifically, but I think I heard in an interview. And when she also says that in the Grants, my grandmother's final smile, I'm going to take that with me. Like that also kind of, it just hits extra close to home. It's very pertinent to what I've dealt with. Actually, this necklace is my grandmother's. I felt it was fitting to wear it for this video because, again, I feel as though songs like this are they are funereal, and they are about the closeness of family. And it sounds like the Grant family are very close. She has her sister Chuck, or Charlie, and then I believe she has a brother and another sister named Caroline, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, she has her father, Rob, and all her aunts and uncles, and then her mother, who I believe she has more of a strained relationship with. But I love how she says, anecdotally, that they sang folk songs from the 40s, apparently, at the funeral for her. I believe this is for her great uncle. Even the 14-year-old knew Froggy came a-courtin'. How do my blood relatives know all of these songs? I don't know anyone left to know songs that I sing. So, I mean, she's just sort of reacting to all of the emotions that she's feeling, the wonderment, the puzzlement, the conviviality of all these people coming together, even over such a somber moment. It is meant to be a celebration of life and of history. And she's finding these glimmers of things unexpected that she didn't expect. And the idea of kintsugi is like, filling in, unexpected accidents, things that you thought caused great pain, but they actually made you stronger. You found light in them somehow. And I think that's emblematic of how she's describing this funeral. Moving on, we have Fingertips. So if I gotta be honest with you, there are some songs on this record that sonically are not strong for me. And I would say Fingertips is perhaps the worst offender in this category. There really isn't really a strong melodic structure to this song. This is once again Lana showing her poetic prowess, but sort of neglecting her songwriting, her compositional prowess. Because I think that this would read and be more interesting to look at or listen to in the form of a poem than it is for me to listen to it. It's a little bit overlong, and it doesn't have a lot of dynamic to it melodically, so it just sort of all feels like one long run-on sentence in a way. But one of the most weighted songs on the record, lyrically. When I look back, tracing fingertips over plastic bags, thinking, I wish I could extrapolate some small intention, or maybe just get your attention for a minute or two. Will I die, or will I get to that 10-year mark? where I beat the extinction of telomeres? And if I do, will you be there with me, father, sister, brother? Charlie, stop smoking. Caroline, will you be with me? Will the baby be all right? Will I have one of mine? Can I handle it even if I do? It's said that my mind is not fit, or so they said, to carry a child. I guess I'll be fine. It wasn't my idea, the cocktail of things that twists neurons inside, but without them I'd die. They say there's irony in the music. It's a tragedy. I see nothing Greek in it. Give me a mausoleum in Rhode Island with Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, and Dave, who hung himself real high in the national park sky. It's a shame, and I'm crying right now. To get to you, save you if I take my life. Find your astral body, put it into my arms, give you 2 seconds to cry, take you home. I'll give you a blanket. Your spirit can sit and watch TV by my side. Because, baby, I ran through a time when I felt you were doing it. I'm getting something, this idea of suicide. Did she have a family member when she was only 15 years old commit suicide? Because she mentions, when I was 15, naked, next door neighbors did a drive-by, pulled me by my waist, long hair to the beach side. I wanted to go out like you, swim with the fishes that he caught on the Rhode Island beaches, but sometimes it's just not your time. And when she sings Who Hung Himself Real High, is that a reference to something like hanging yourself? I'm not sure. That's a real extrapolation here, but she's talking about family trauma and family tragedy, and perhaps there is someone in her family that she experienced having mental health issues that ended their own life. But this is, this is stream of consciousness, emotive, ruminating on all sorts of tragedies that have happened in her life. And you can't really get a clear sense of time or place if she's talking about something that happened when she was 15 years old, or if she's talking about something that happened last year. The song is very sprawling in that regard. It sort of weaves together all of these familial anecdotes together in a very sort of nonchalant way. She sings about, being an aunt and her sister and their, her niece, and how it makes her want to have a child, but she's not sure if she'd be a good mother. And she references something I find really hard hitting is verse 7. Caroline, what kind of mother was she to say I'd end up in institutions? All I wanted to do was kiss Aaron Green and sit by the lake, twisting lime into the drinks that they made, have a babe at 16 in the town I was born in, and die. Again, it references that, she probably does not have a good relationship, or didn't have a good relationship with her mother, and her mother may have looked at the way Lana wanted to live her life, or the choices that she was making, and think she was going down a bad path. And so she's saying, to her sister, how horrible was that? All I wanted was to just stay at our hometown and have a baby young, and, I just wanted to be a mother and a lover. And I wanted to, keep that family tradition alive. And they said I was going too fast, or they thought I was a harlot, or they thought I was, going to end up a deadbeat. I don't know. That's what I'm gathering, is she's just sort of mulling over why her mother was so judgmental of her, and the choices that she wanted to make. Aaron ended up dead and not me. What's wrong with your head to send me away, never to come back? So apparently her mother must have sent her away when she was young. Exotic places and people don't take the place of being your child. So yeah, you can't fix this issue by sending me away and thinking it's going to heal our relationship. But I only gave myself 2 seconds to cry. And then I went back to being a serene queen, as she sings at the very final verse. I just needed 2 seconds to be me before, I guess, she had to be, I believe, she ended up going to New York City at a young age, maybe to live with someone else. I'm not sure. But I believe, she grew up in the Adirondacks region, Lake Placid, but then moved to New York. And then by extension, and moving to Los Angeles. So I'm interpreting and guessworking here, but that's what her lyrics do. She doesn't spell everything out, but she gives you morsels, and you have to kind of weave the stitches together. But yeah, I'm getting a story of abandonment, issues with her mother and relationship with her, and potentially, her mother maybe having some founded concerns about Lana's choices at a young age, but at the same time not giving her any space to sort of make mistakes, grow and learn and be a teenager, not giving her really any grace, judging her too harshly, maybe misrepresenting what she wanted to do, not really understanding her. Yeah, so it's a tragic song. Anyway, Fingertips is a lot. It's a lot. I spent a lot of time, sonically, it's not it for me, but lyrically, it's probably the most important song that Lana needed to write for this record. So then we sort of come back to the strongest melodies, but, maybe lyrically a little like lighter subject matter. Paris, Texas is such an interesting title. There is a Paris, Texas, just like there is also a Florence, Alabama. I think it's such an interesting euphemism to use that specific reference or that place to sort of symbolize American sort of Midwest, escapism, because it's not really Paris, it's not really Florence, it's Texas, it's Alabama, like it's a reality check, but it is still somewhere new. And of course, Lana is singing about, thematically, I think in the part of the story, like the part where she just knew that, the relationship she might have was talking about in Candy Necklace, where it was so heavy and dark, she needed to leave. This was the time to go. When you know, it's time to go. And the melody just lifts you with its wings. Like it's such a wistful and idyllic melody. It gives me pastoral countryside, summer days. It's a beautiful, fanciful melody. And then I believe that we sort of come to the conclusion of the heavy chapter of this narrative, of this arc, with "Grandfather, please stand on the shoulders of my father while he's deep sea fishing." Quite a mouthful of a title here. I saw quite a few people on Twitter talking about, imagine if Fiona Apple and Lana Del Rey wrote an album together, and some of the really long, absurd titles they could come up with. 3 white butterflies to know you're near, she opens and ends the song with. And once again, we are, channeling our ancestors here. "I know they think that it took somebody else to make me beautiful, as they intended me to be, but they're wrong." The melody here is, so poignantly gorgeous. "I know they think that it took thousands of people to put me together again like an experiment. Some big men behind the scenes, sewing Frankenstein black dreams into my songs, but they're wrong. God, if you're near me, send me 3 white butterflies, or an owl to know you're listening, sitting while I'm drinking." These are, spirit animals that maybe had connotations with her grandfather. "Grandfather, please stand on the shoulders of my father while he's deep sea fishing for sharks in the Pacific. God, if you're near me, send me 3 white butterflies, or a map to know your vision, impart on me your wisdom." I mean, it is a call to the ancestors in sort of an Eastern sense, of finding your own inner compass through the aid of their family, who are always near you. Their spirit never leaves, and they help guide your way through life. It's a beautiful sort of romantic idealization of this sentiment, and the melody is revelatory and cathartic as I'd want it to be for such a cathartic moment in this record. And then I guess, to close the heavy part of the record, we have "Let the Light In" featuring Father John Misty, a much more, folk Americana ballad, simplistically just singing about, flirtatiously, back and forthing with your partner. you may fight, but you end up coming back in, how they complement each other in their weird sort of idiosyncrasies. And Father John Misty, it was interesting. I was like, who does he sound like? And then I was like, he sounds like the lead vocalist of Fleet Foxes. I've never really listened to Father John Misty before. I know Lana featured on one of his records back in the day, but I just keep hearing the Fleet Foxes vocalist. I'm sure other people probably picked up on that. So I'm like, if Lana ever did collaborate with Fleet Foxes, which I would love to see, I think that would be, I think they're both in a similar sort of lane of songwriting. I think it'd be really interesting to see them collaborate. This is the closest we may ever get to that. So in my mind, it's Lana featuring Fleet Foxes, but but it's a beautiful melody. It's very homely. Now, Margaret, Margaret is featuring Bleachers, which, as you know, is Jack Antonoff's sort of like pet project band. And it is the most Jack Antonoff sounding song on the record. We even get his vocals on it, which, oh boy, some men, oh. I mean, I had hot takes about Bon Iver being on, some of Taylor Swift's songs. It's just some of these men just don't deserve the microphone. I'm sorry. Lana does her thing. When she needs to melodically with her voice, it sounds just as good as I'd want it to. But it's Jack's vocals really ruin this song for me. But she opens it up, this is a simple song, gonna write it for a friend. I'm presuming it's Jack and his fiance, Margaret. He met Margaret on a rooftop. She was wearing white, and he was like, I might be in trouble. He had flashes of the good life. He was like, should I jump off this building now or do it on the double? Because baby, if your love is in trouble, when you know, kind of makes me laugh running down that path. When you're good, it's gold, because when you know, you know. I mean, it's a lighthearted, celebratory song for a friend, but I don't take it as much more than that. But it has merit sonically, except for the parts that Jack Antonoff sings. And, it's not my least favorite on the record. I will say, Fishtail, this is a little controversial. I think that Fishtail is trying to do a little too much at once with the production. I think that if Lana had stripped this down, or if she'd gone in a different, I don't know. It's just not working for me sonically. I also think that I feel like we're still somewhat autobiographical, but it's a little bit less her unique story. I feel like we're sort of out of that part of the record, and we're now sort of singing about other people again, especially coming after a song like Margaret, or Let the Light In. This is the lighter part of the record. This is a little bit more of a carefree part of the record. Don't you dare say that you'll braid my hair, babe. If you really don't care, you wanted me sadder. Fishtail, what's the matter with that? So a fishtail braid, simple braid. Skipping rope in the bayou. Not that smart, but I've got things to say. I do love that line. I wish I could skinny dip inside of your mind. Wonderful lyric. Then we have Peppers. This is definitely the most unserious song on the record, but you know what? It's brilliant. And I think that it works. Tommy Genesis does a great job. She does a great job at featuring Tommy Genesis' song Angelina. She interpolates it, hand on your knees, I'm Angelina Jolie. Hands on your knees, Angelina Jolie. Like, it's so raw and gritty and urban. Do a fat crisscross in the back somewhere. I mean, it's like almost, I don't know the original song, but it's giving me schoolyard sort of sing-along kind of energy. Me and my boyfriend listen to the Chili Peppers, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. We write hit songs without trying, like, all the time. I just love when Lana's so unserious like this. I mean, she's just having fun and being honest. Like, she's like, I'm not here to, like, tone down my sense of humor or my sarcasm or my personality. Like, I'm just going to be Lana on this track. I take off all my clothes, dance naked for the neighbors. I'm like, F it, gonna give a show. I open up the blinds. Like, this is exactly what you can imagine Lana being like when she's just, in the studio, just like shooting the breeze, I throw caution to the wind. My boyfriend tested positive for COVID. It don't matter. We've been kissing. So whatever he has, I have. I can't cry. This is so Lana Del Rey, putting in like lyrics that are kind of like, why'd you put that in there? Like it's so oddly specific. Um, it's like unnecessary information, but it's so hilarious. And also kind of fitting for Lana's sort of devil may care attitude that she has on this record, like, well, so what? Everyone's worried about that. And I'm just like, whatever my boyfriend has, I have. Like, let's be real, y'all. let's not pretend that let's just fully surrender to being uncouth, shall we? So, yeah, there's this spoken bridge where she sings about, there's this song called Wipeout. I guess it's like this surf guitar song or something, and she kind of interpolates that into it, and it just becomes this cacophony of the Angelina Jolie song and that song, and it's a mess, but it's a hot mess, just like Lana is. You can imagine Lana just coming out from the club, just like high on her own supply, like just having fun. And you know what? She deserves to after the heaviness of this record. So I appreciate the back half of the end of this record kind of being a little lighter in that respect. But I definitely prefer Taco Truck if we're going to talk about upbeat tracks. It starts out, wistful guitar. I met my boyfriend down at the taco truck. Imagine if we actually gave a fuck, which I think is so, again, aptly poignant Lana Del Rey sort of nihilism. Wouldn't that be something to talk about for us? Caribbean Blue and Sweater Weather, I'm falling into you. The fact that Caribbean Blue is capitalized in Genius here has me wondering, and I wondered this when I listened to the lyrics, is she referring to the Enya song? Which, if she is, my girl, Lana, yes. Yes, Lana. I know Lana would be down for Enya. I know she would. Listening to Caribbean Blue and Sweater Weather, that is a vibe. That is a vibe. I'm falling into you. Although it seems I've gotten better, I can be violent too. And that's why they call me Lanita. When I get down, I'm bonita. She's so funny. She's so funny. Then there's this outro by this woman named Margaret Qualley, who says, honey, I got up so early and then I got into the shower. I was just able to go back to sleep for an hour and a half. So that rocked. Anyway, I had this dream where, I don't know. And I heard it. I was listening to a song and I was just like, this is so relatably sort of nothing. But it's perfect. Like reality is, profound but puzzling. So like when you want to tell someone about a dream, you're like, as I'm saying it, I'm forgetting what it is it's about. Like, I'm sorry. I thought I had something to tell you, but I don't anymore. Like, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just drunk, or I'm just tired, or I just woke up, or, like I'm just really in love with you. Like that kind of sentiment. I think it's a really interesting way to go into part 2, which is the reboot of Venice Bitch, which is her opus from Norman F. and Rockwell. Yeah, I think ending the record on what is considered Lana's car cruising song is a perfect way at closing out the vibe. This is obviously making me fall in love with the original song even more. It's such a great melody. It's so devil may care. Like it's just very breezy, sunny, but like late afternoon, it's a little hazy, it's a little humid, it's a little sleepy. But she adds a little bit of an angst to it because there is a little bit more of an urgent sort of produced backbone to it this time. It's not just all like acoustic. It's heavier on the sort of electronic production. And so it adds a little bit of an urban flair. It's a really interesting way to interpolate an old song of hers. And I'd love to see more of that, with her in her songwriting moving forward. So overall, we have, quite a journey here. We've got 16 songs. It is quite a lengthy record. Many of the songs are way over 4 minutes. I do think that there are some songs that are a little indulgent, like melodically, they're not very strong. But I think every song, for the most part, is saying something very important. Not that Lana doesn't have songs that don't say things that are important. It's just, it feels like, I don't know, it just feels like she knew what she was doing more this time around. Does that make any sense? Like there was a little bit more of a plan here. and it just feels a little bit more artful. Not to, again, she's always going to be artful and deft with her pen. I cannot say that, she hasn't been before, especially in her recent work. But there's just something about this record that has me feeling as though it's more timeless than Blue Banisters or Chemtrails. This is, obviously her most highest rated critically record to date since Norman. So clearly, she's going in a good path here. And I have high hopes that it'll get some, serious critical acclaim from the industry. I mean, Grammys, you can't ignore this record. I mean, you did give Norman a pop vocal nomination, right? I believe that was the nomination it got, pop vocal album. At the very least, would you give it here? Although you could give it an alternative too, like, let's be real. Lana is kind of one of those genre, chameleons. She could go into the alternative, but they tend to put her in pop, which, sort of makes sense, but not always. This record is very alternative in a lot of ways. And it is, I think, something that the Grammys would probably favor, but you know how the Grammys are with Lana, they pretend she doesn't exist in the industry. It's really sad. And she's been putting in the work. And I do think she should take a longer break, but it's been a while since Blue Banisters, and I felt like this was still a decent length of time to put out a new body of work. And she does work fast, and she does bring quality most of the time. So I'm not unhappy with it. At the end of the day, I think Ocean Blvd is going to have a lot of staying power. I think it is going to have a lot of songs that I'm going to be listening to for a long time, just like some of my other favorite records of hers. And I think this was a very important album for her to make. I think that, if she were to take a bit of a break, maybe this would be a good point to do so. But we'll see. I felt that way after a lot of her recent records. So we'll see. If Lana wants to focus on having a family, I think she has a new boyfriend. I think she does. I know she broke up with her last one. Anyway, Lana's love life I haven't really been able to keep up with. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about my sort of thoughts on the record? What are your favorite songs? What are your least favorites? Is this one of your favorite records? I definitely think that this is like one of her top 3-4 records of her career. Like, I definitely feel that way. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will link in the description all my other Lana Del Rey reviews that I have done on this channel, as I have reviewed all of her albums to date. And please subscribe if you are new here, because I will continually talk about anything that Lana Del Rey puts out, as well as other artists that are tangential to her sometimes. So I do cover a bit of variety on this channel. So if you're interested, I'd recommend that. Thank you all again so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed day. Peace, love, and light. Let the light in. Bye.